Morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is feeling oneself. Every now and then we have experiences where we don't feel like ourselves. And I think it would be an interesting conversation to look at what does that mean and how does that show up? And what is this self that we connect to? But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And then let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your electrons, all your cells, all your molecules, creating this brilliant beam of vibrant light going from the inside out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation and the tickling and the tingling, and allow yourselves to become present right here, right now, to these magnificent physical forms that enable us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so good to be here with you this morning. As always, today we're going to talk about feeling oneself and what is it like when we don't feel like ourselves? What actually is happening there? This topic comes from just really being through a passage recently for me that I really have felt disoriented, really not felt myself. And it's made me question, what is the self that I'm used to feeling that I wasn't feeling? So good morning, Susan. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. So I think one of the themes of this week has been normalcy and the assumption of continuity. And I think this is a continuation of that topic. When we feel ourselves, I guess we feel at home in our body, we feel fluid in our body. In a way, when we feel ourselves, we don't have the perspective, like we're not, when we feel ourselves, we're immersed. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. We're talking about feeling ourselves and what it's like if we don't, and what it means if we do. I think that when we feel ourselves, when we feel embodied, when we feel, I'm going to dare to say normal, we really don't notice how we feel, which is really interesting, right? We just sort of take for granted how we are, how things are, how it feels to be in our body, how it feels to see through our eyes, how it feels to have our emotions. We don't even have awareness of those experiences because they're just innately present for ourselves. We're immersed. And interestingly, it's when we feel ourselves that we don't even notice that we're feeling ourselves. right? Like we don't go through the day and say, wow, I really feel like myself today. The only the times that we recognize our feeling of ourselves is when we don't feel ourselves, when we feel disoriented, when we feel out of sync, out of sorts. And that's when our awareness comes to who we are, who we're being, how we're being, what the normal, what the norm is, what the divergence from that norm is. So, we're such interesting beings, aren't we? I mean, we strive for consciousness, we strive for, or many of us strive for presence, for mindfulness, right? Mindfulness, being present to what's going on. And yet, when we're in the flow of life, we have this sort of suspended perspective on its mechanics. It's just, we're in the flow of it. We're just doing life. We're doing stuff, and we're engaged. And then things arise that take us out of that flow. And that's when we can recognize that it's the contrast, actually, right? We get to get contrast. We get to have a different perspective, a different sensation. Susan says, so hard, message media and even Facebook go this way and that way. So I think what you're saying, Susan, is that there's input. We get this input from the external world. And so Susan says, oh yes, triggers, contrast. So we get this input from the external world. Good morning, Dennis. So good to have you here, as always. We're talking about being oneself, and what is it? What is that? What is it to be ourselves? And what is it when we feel like we're not ourselves? Who are we? So Rawson says, derailed, out of flow, off track, not aligned, but you can get unstuck by asking, how do I want to feel this day? And Susan says, all of this, exactly. So yes, we can bring ourselves back on track by consciously choosing, as Susan's suggesting, how about feeling peace, to bring ourselves into a conscious place of presence. But I think what I'm curious about this morning is what takes us out of the flow. So it's kind of ironic that to be able to feel peace, we need to feel a disruption to recognize, oh, we get to choose how we feel, right? So maybe we're feeling anxious, or we're feeling sad, or we're feeling angry, and there's a moment of grace, perhaps, where we can recognize the opportunity to choose to feel a certain way. The thing with all this is like, when we feel anxious, for example, Susan says, mine's my family, the triggers, I'm guessing. You're not alone in that, Susan. Lots and lots of us have triggers with our families. That's kind of one of the main functions of family, is to give us growth through triggers. Anyway, I think it's interesting because if we feel anxious or we feel sad or whatever, we don't necessarily identify that as not feeling ourselves, because maybe those feelings are so familiar that we identify with them. I'm so sorry, Susan. Susan says emotional abuse. I'm so sorry. That's such a challenge to grow up through, emotional abuse, and to find one's own way and one's own path and strength through a history of being told that one's not good enough, or that you're insufficient or not okay in a multitude of ways. And we then absorb these patterns and take them on as our own. And so I want to go back to this idea, like those patterns of what started as external abuse, and then we internalize it and we brutalize ourselves, like that is not an experience, unfortunately, where we tend to say, I don't feel myself. Those are things that we then oftentimes acclimate ourselves to and believe that is who we are. Good morning, Lisa. So good to have you here, really, truly. But it's interesting because this notion of self encompasses such a broad spectrum of experience and emotion and thought and belief, and lots of contradictions also, like knowing we're worthy and feeling like we're not, and just on and on and on, extremes of emotions and perspectives that we're able to hold, all as part of this self that we believe ourselves to be. And yet there are moments when we just don't feel ourselves. Good morning, Elaine. So good to have you joining us. Lisa says, no, we're enough. Yes, exactly. I'm just trying to put my finger today on this phenomena of not feeling like oneself, because this past week, truly, I didn't feel like myself. Now, I don't know who I felt like. What I felt was unfamiliar. What I felt was disoriented. What I felt was out of sync, like even moving in my body, I didn't feel fluid. I didn't feel like I was embodying my body. And I'm wondering, like in that moment, in those moments of not feeling myself, what was the self that I thought I used to feel? And I'm coming back around and around to this idea of self, because we have a fixed notion in some way. We have a fixed notion of who we are. And the truth is, it's not fixed. It's not static. We are all experience. And it's just so fascinating to me that we identify with certain aspects of that experience as being more truly who we are than other aspects of experience. So Rosalind says, are we driven by egoism that seeks personal happiness at the exclusion of others' welfare? That's a big question, Rosalind. Wow. Not sure where that came from, but we'll address it in a second. And Rosalind goes on to say, instead of why is this happening to me? What can I learn from this experience? So are we driven by egoism that seeks personal happiness at the exclusion of others' welfare? I'll tell you what, I would venture to say that, yes, there are moments when we are. and that's not necessarily true all the time. And really, the foundation of this conversation is that nothing is that necessarily true all the time. That things are in flux and change and transformation, and it's our minds that create the continuity. It's our minds that build these constructs that that enable us to operate in an illusion of continuity of self, continuity of consciousness, continuity of experience, expectation, etc. And so sometimes we're driven to seek personal happiness at all costs and with no concern for others, and other times that's not what we're driven by at all. And we can, even the question, why is this happening to me? I want to go back to the notion that life is not happening to us, it happens for us and through us. Now, you can take that on as truth or not. I'm not saying it's the truth. I'm saying that's my working hypothesis. And even when things happen that are derailing and disorienting and devastating, even, that there is a gift in that is life happening for us and through us. And so I think this sense of self, like to allow for this notion of self to be something that is completely fluid, that is an evolution of itself all the time, that there's a greater freedom in that, where, you know, like we see themes in our lives, we see these repetitions of excuse me, trauma and patterns of pain, and we think that that's who we are, but they're just patterns. They're just patterns. They're just themes. They're just stories. They're just threads that connect all the different experiences of our lives. And we make these things real. We make them true. We make them fact. And this is all getting back to the conversation about what is self. So Elaine says, blessings, enjoy the unfolding of this now, all love. Thank you, Elaine. Lisa says, as soon as we're sure of the path, they move the goalposts. I think it's to keep us on our toes. I think that that's true, that the goalposts are ever moving, you know, and it is, excuse me, more than anything else, it's a dance. It's a dance of discovery. It's a dance of unfolding. It's a dance of what's real and what's not real. And I think the answer is none of it's real and all of it's real. That we get to live in this incredible paradox of being a constant presence, constant soul, constant consciousness, and being no consciousness at all, like being no static thing, being instead the flow. And as we detach ourselves from the self and from these fixed notions of being, what happens is that the vast potential of unbounded possibility becomes open to us. It's so interesting to me, like in any given moment, we can have a flip of mind that completely transforms our experience of who we are. In one moment, we can switch from being a victim and unworthy and downtrodden to stepping into the brilliance of our most vibrant, most empowered light in any moment. And there's no actual barrier to doing that. There's no actual inhibition. I mean, I'll amend that. So yes, we have we have neurological patterns, we have chemical patterns, but the thing is that in any given moment, we can switch on a dime, we can flip on a dime, we can let go of our old reality and our old construct and our old belief and our old identity and become something new. In any moment, we truly can, because we're not fixed entities. So Rosalind says, I had a comment earlier that was missed. Perhaps we feel out of sorts because our value gets reevaluated. I'm so sorry I missed your comment, Rosalind. I really appreciate you entering it again. So perhaps we feel out of sorts because our value gets reevaluated. And I think that that's accurate. I think that our perspective gets reevaluated. The things that we took for granted, the things that we assumed are called into question. And then there is this reevaluation, there's a reassessment, there's a reorientation where we need to recalibrate and readjust and redefine. And we don't need to redefine, but that's kind of what we do as humans. We're meaning making machines, we're story making machines. We want to make sense out of all of it. Good morning, Robin. So good to have you joining us. Thank you so much for being here. And Lisa says, with the lunar eclipse coming tomorrow. I didn't know that. Thank you, Lisa. The planets are wreaking havoc. There are going to be 2 eclipses within the next 2 weeks. It's causing a lot of thinking, reflecting, and communication. Well, I think that this is, it's certainly something that's needed, right? We definitely get to use these moments of the thinning of the veil to potentially catapult ourselves into new dimensions of perception and awareness. And really the thing that is coming to clarity for me more and more is that we get to let go more and more of all the things that we think we are, all the beliefs and all the dogma and all the patterns. We get to recognize those patterns and recognize them just as patterns, like they're not the truth, they're not who you are, they're just patterns. And when we can recognize that that's the case, then we can free ourselves potentially to follow different patterns, that we don't need to cling to them. We don't need to identify with those patterns. Elaine says, what is true can't be threatened. And what is not really what is true can't be threatened, and what is not really does not exist. Awakening to the truth within and truly free of the mind is a magnificent unfolding on the journey to remember the true self, empty of all, letting go of the false self-beliefs. Yes, it's a process, beloved. It helps. It is a process. It is a process where we get to loosen our grip on all the stuff that we think we know. And the thing about doing that is it's terrifying in so many respects for so many people, because the illusion of knowing gives us some kind of illusion of control. And yet, as we release that that control and that illusion, what happens is that as we're opening our hands from that very, very tight grip, as we're opening our hands, then we have the ability to touch everything beyond that, right? Beyond those limiting ideas. And what happens is that the whole world opens up. Good afternoon, Pat. So good to have you here with us. We're talking about self and what is self? What is it to feel ourselves, and what is it to feel not ourselves? And certainly, like, feeling ourselves is feeling in alignment. And the question is, feeling in alignment with what? I often talk about our heart and our soul song and this pure essence that is the energy of our being. When we're in alignment, we're not resisting, and ideas, this is maybe a radical thought, but ideas and beliefs are resistance. I mean, I don't know how to operate without ideas or beliefs, so I'm just playing with these ideas right now. But you know, our beliefs are creating polarities, right? And I believe, I think, I hypothesize that there's a way to hold our beliefs that allow us to use them in a functional way rather than them owning us. And so Lisa says, some people are living through generational constellations that cause patterns to be. This is the time to realize and break the pattern. I see it with my siblings and their children. The behavior and the consequences continue. You know, I find this generational constellation thing so fascinating, Lisa, because I see patterns like that in my own family as well, and in other families, and really in humanity, right? And the thing is that I believe, and again, a working hypothesis, it's not proven by any stretch at this point, but I tend to believe that when we can actually recognize these patterns as patterns, like as a construct that is not who we are, then we have the capacity to just dissolve them. That when we actually can presence ourselves to something as this construct that is not our own, that is not a part of who we are, that is not defining us, that there's magic that can happen where it can just completely dissolve and disappear. It's like by being really, it's like when you feel your feelings, the feelings dissolve. And I think when we recognize the pattern, like when we can see it without being at the effect of it, that it maybe can just poof. And I think we have a greater and a greater ability right now, as the veil is thinning, to disappear these patterns. Elaine says, when one is truly ready to let go and remember, one does. Well, I think we get to know that we have the opportunity to do that. You know, that we really do have the capacity to disappear these things. You know, it's a phase shift. It's a shift of awareness. You know, sometimes the simplest reframe can just create a switch of mind that disappears something that has been in existence for most of your known history. The mind is quite a remarkable thing. And it is a matter of finding that angle, finding that perspective. Like I see this emerging in some of my clients. I have this one magnificent client who, oh my gosh, what a brilliant, huge hearted soul who has suffered so much in life, and has, you know, it has been up against, like, when is it going to stop? And now what's happening is the revelation that it's going to stop when this person chooses to be their strength, their own strength, to not believe that other people are, that pleasing other people is more important, that they're less than, that they have this obligation and responsibility to try and prove themselves to other people at their own expense. And what I got to see is this magnificent strength starting to emerge of, wait a minute, I count, I matter. What I desire matters. What my heart wants matters. And that I don't have to be apologizing for that anymore. I don't have to be trying to turn myself into somebody else for other people. And that's when life turns around. And sometimes it's like the flash of lightning, and it just switches. And other times it's a long and arduous path, but it can happen. And so you don't have to be stuck with the patterns that you've had, despite the fact that you've had them through your life. I have two extraordinary clients who are in their 70s who are experiencing new patterns and new possibilities, and it is just such a magnificent privilege to see their transformation. So it's never too late. Lisa says, it took me 55 years to learn that lesson. But wow, was it worth the wait? Now I exude confidence and I take care of me. I will never let anyone knock me ever again. Congratulations, Lisa. And what a lesson, right? What a lesson. And so good on you to have come to that place where you have taken the reins of your life. And we all have the capacity to do that. The interesting thing is that we can be so downtrodden that we don't even realize it. And so to step into that and to have that revelation, that is life transforming. So congratulations to you. It's huge. And it's a transformation that's available to us all. Rosalind says, what do we hold near and precious to us, put our faith into? And at the same time, knowing and accept that belief or pattern can change when given the room and allowance to shift. I think that's a great question, Rosalind, to be looking at what do we hold precious? What do we put our faith into? And I think, again, all of these things to hold with open hand. That is the key, because then we can allow for things to shift and change and transform and evolve, and we can allow for our growth to go into directions that we might not have anticipated. Elaine says, moving to the heart and getting comfortable with the unknown, formless you. Yes, letting go of control and allow all to flow without judgment. And that's the practice, to let things flow without judgment. For sure, that's the practice. And Elaine says to Lisa, rock on, beautiful. I'm right there with you. Absolutely, rock on. Well, I just want to say thank you for engaging in this conversation. I'm just going to read Lisa's comment before we wrap up. My new role as leader in my life suits me. It sure sounds like it does, Lisa. For the first time, I like myself. Congratulations. That is the best gift you could give yourself, for sure. The people that kept me down aren't thrilled with the fact that I took back that power, but I say screw them. I like me. I'm a work in progress, but I'm something in the right direction. Heads up, wings on. I love it. So congratulations. And for the people who don't appreciate your coming into your own power, oh well, that's on them. And they will fall away, and the people who appreciate you for who you are will arise in your life. Dennis, thank you. Love to all of you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern each weekday morning. And oh, you're so sweet, Lisa. Thank you so much. So you guys are the best way to start my day, and I so appreciate you. Please check out all the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network on the Facebook page, Enlightened World Living, EWN One with the Earth. And I'm so grateful to you. You've been a foundation for me, and I just can't thank you enough. So until next time.